I reached $200,000 in annual run rate for my solo consulting business in my lifestyle studio, while maintaining 80% personal profit. And I went from working 50 hours a week, forcing on sales calls, and relying on an unreliable, pushy acquisition system built on a fragile business, to now working 50% less, serving my clients instead of selling, and also building a freedom-based business that supports my lifestyle. So in this video, I'll show you exactly how to craft your own lifestyle studio based on my own experience, and all it takes is for you to leverage your expertise into a core offer, and then designing a content and conversion ecosystem that compounds around your life. 12 months ago, I was focusing on short-term acquisition push on just one platform, Instagram. I was making 5K per month, but behind the scenes, I was throwing 2K on ads each month, paying commission to my 2-person sales team, which looking back was a terrible decision at that stage. And after everything, I was only keeping around 2K in profit. Every week felt like resetting back to zero. And what made it worse was the contradiction. I was helping my clients to streamline their sales, acquisition, and delivery, telling them to build lifestyle businesses that give them more freedom and enjoyment. And that kind of didn't make sense because I was running a high demand, high stress business that was doing the exact opposite for my own life. I felt disconnected from my own purpose. I felt like I was moving toward a dead end. I started my business to create freedom and to influence people through authenticity. But what I was living didn't match what I was teaching. The breaking point was realizing I was preaching about lifestyle freedom while running a business that was controlling my time, my energy, and my attention. That's when I knew something had to change. After 1 year running my fragile business, most important thing I learned is that if your business and lifestyle aren't designed as one system, growth doesn't create more freedom, it just multiplies pressure. So I decided to completely change the direction of my business and start building what eventually became my lifestyle studio. I've got my iPad here, and let me show you how I fixed this before it fixed me. The way I think about consulting now is actually pretty simple. Most people aren't building studios, they're building factories. Factories are designed for output. They're optimized for volume, speed, and pressure. They need a constant flow of demand just to keep the machine running. And if that demand ever slows down, everything starts to feel unstable. But a studio is a little bit different. A studio is designed around the creator. The person is intentional and built with a clear purpose in mind. Instead of forcing constant output, it's designed to support high quality of work over a long period of time. And that difference completely changes how my business operates. And now I operate my business based on these 3 philosophies. The first philosophy behind my studio is influence through authenticity. In a studio, you don't perform, you don't pretend, you don't put on a costume or exaggerate a lifestyle just to look successful. And of course, there are a lot of people who's doing that, but instead, I want to show people who I am. I want to show my work as it actually is and let people see how I think, how I approach problems, how I make decisions behind the screen. There's no staged lifestyle, but just pure clarity around how I operate day to day. And the second belief is that forced sales are a signal of broken system. In a factory-style business, sales are being pushed because there's targets have to be hit and there's always urgency in the air. But in a well-designed studio, sales shouldn't feel like selling. If you constantly have to chase people, convince them, or manufacture urgency, it usually means the front end of your studio isn't doing its job. Maybe the position isn't clear and the work isn't being understood before the conversation even starts. In a healthy setup, the core isn't where trust is created, it's where both confirms alignment, like someone choosing to step into your space because they already understand how you work and the environment you've built. And the third belief is that money saves time, time builds leverage. And here's a quick story for you. Early on, I treated money as something I needed to protect at all costs. I was careful, and I think I was almost too careful. Because over time, I realized a studio don't scale by being cautious. They scale by being intentional. The smartest use of money isn't just saving it, it's using it to buy back time. Time to think clearly, time to refine, and to design systems properly instead of rushing decisions just to keep things moving. And that's why investing in mentorships mattered so much for me, because it compressed years of trials and error into a clear direction. Instead of guessing how to build the studio, I learned from people who already made the mistakes while building their own. And that time saved became leverage, and that leverage compounds into influence. Now, when you put these three beliefs together, my studio really starts to take into shape. These three philosophies shaped every decision I made around acquisition, content, ads, and delivery and sales. So instead of talking in abstraction, I want to show you how this way of thinking turns into something more practical as a set of core components that everything else in my business is built around. And it all starts with the first and most important decision in the studio: what the work is centered on. The first component of the lifestyle studio is a core offer that's built directly on your expertise. Because without a clear core offer, there's no real foundation to build anything on. Everything else becomes unstable. And what I've seen again and again in consulting and my own experience is that people try to build the out layer of the business first. They focus on content, hiring, lead generation, or scaling before they've clearly defined what the actual work is centered on around. And that's when you end up tweaking your business to whatever demand shows up instead of intentionally deciding what your studio wants to be known for. In a studio, everything starts with the work as the foundation. For me, my lifestyle studio is built around marketing and sales, but not in a generic sense. It's built around how marketing, positioning, and sales actually work together in online service-based businesses, especially for creators, consultants, and online service providers who wants to create more leverage. And after a couple of years, I realized that my real expertise wasn't just running ads or closing deals. Instead, it was understand how attention, content, nurturing, and intent needs to be designed together. So the sales part don't feel forceful and the business doesn't rely on constant pressure to survive. And I shaped that experience into a clear core product that helped creators build a lifestyle business using hybrid acquisition flywheel that sells for them. And that core product become the foundation of my studio. It taught me what to talk about and also what not to talk about, and clarify who my content is for, the kind of clients I work best with, and the type of problem I want to solve long term. Now we got our core product. The second component of the lifestyle studio is a designed ecosystem. This is the layer that connects your expertise to the right people and allow them to understand how you think before they ever talk to you or work with you. I guide my prospects through this ecosystem, and I use content to bridge the gap between me and the market. It does the pre-work for me by building trust and setting expectations. So I start with IG ads, and I don't use ads trying to go viral. I use ads to control volume. If I have room to take on one more conversation, I turn the spend up. If I don't, I turn it down. And I use ads because it can specifically target who I actually want using the settings in the ads manager, and that's something organic content just can't. The ads themselves are not designed to sell or close a sale. They introduce a specific problem and a clear point of view. The goal is to attract people who recognize themselves in the message, but I'm not here to convince anyone to take action immediately. I judge the performance of the ad based on what happens after the click, the quality of people coming in, the conversation I follow, not just surface level metrics. And anyone who enters the ecosystem through ads goes through a light discovery step through the DM. And this isn't a sales call. I'm just simply learning about their business, their goals, and where they feel stuck, because it tells me what kind of steps they need to take next. Based on that little discovery, I move people from attention, which is ads, to nurturing through long-form contents. And this is where the most work is done. Long-form content does what ads and short-form contents can't. It shows how I think, how I work, it shows my world, how the system works, and who this approach is actually for. Some people resonate and keep going, and some of them realize it's not for them and just leave. So once the long-form content has done its job, the audience changes from passive to warm. They understand how my studio works and whether it's a fit for them. And at that point, settings are just used to capture intent. I make the next step very clear so that when someone feels ready, they can just raise the hand without any resistance. I'm not trying to talk to everyone. I only talk to the people that understand and it makes sense for them, because the foundation of the work has already been done through long-form contents. So sales conversation should feel very different. There's far less explaining to do and no more emotional selling. The conversation is more about focus on fit, timing, and not selling. Now, every conversation, every sales call, every person that converted or not converted will produces something called conversion data. And this is one of the most important steps in this whole ecosystem. When someone decides to move forward, it shows exactly what worked. The messaging, the expectations, the ads, the timing, and when someone doesn't, that's just as useful. It usually points to friction or missing context or misalignment earlier in the whole system. So instead of pushing them to make a decision, we put them back into a retargeting loop, into the nodes, into a retargeting loop where they keep seeing content that adds more clarity and fill in the gaps for them. And I need to keep refining to remove the friction and filling this misalignment. And the objections are especially valuable. Most of the time, they don't point to your sales skills or your closing skills. They point to a gap in the ads, the contents, or the positioning or the messaging. As I'm going, I will start seeing a pattern and they will tell me what areas needs to be refined for. And that data feeds back into the system over time, and less inputs are required from me to produce the same or even better outcomes. So that's how the system compounds, by getting clearer with every section of this whole loop. Now we know how to get people walk into our studio, and then it comes to the final component of the lifestyle studio, delivery. I design my delivery through 2 clear paths, and this is very important because without clear delivery paths, even the strongest product, the strongest offer becomes very messy. You either overextend yourself trying to help everyone the same way, or you build something that's so rigid and stops fitting in. So here's how it works. Instead of forcing everyone into one format, my studio offers 2 ways for people to enter. The first delivery path is done for you. In this path, people are invited directly into my studio to work side by side with me. We install the system together, but it's always built around their life, their goals, and the challenges they're encountering. And our focus isn't on speed, it's on stability. So this type of partnership is usually a very good fit for people who already know how the service works, already have clients, already selling, and stacking up momentum. But what they don't want is to personally handle the marketing side of their business. They want to stay focused on what they do best, which is delivering the service and helping more people without constantly worrying about ads, content, and etc. So that's where I step in. I come into the business and help implement the entire system. I take ownership of the marketing side, the ads, the core marketing assets, and build out the entire process and make sure all of this is built to scale and, more importantly, to keep working over long term. And usually this partnership will be minimum 9 months with a 10K setup fee and a 20% performance fee of profit share. This length is quite perfect for both sides because the flywheel does not compound in short cycles. At the beginning, everything is still unknown. But then as we run the system, we will see patterns, we'll collect data, how well the messaging performs, ads, where people hesitate, and what actually moves them forward. And that only comes from real enough data, and they can't be rushed. This is a high demand, high touch model. I only work with a small number of clients at once to keep the studio focused, to keep me focused, and to keep the clients focused. Now, some people don't want a studio to build everything for them. They want to stay closely involved in the work. They want to understand the system, make the decisions themselves, and build something they fully own. So that's where the consulting model comes in. Instead of me installing the system side by side with them, the studio becomes a space where they build it themselves with clear direction and structure. They're still doing the work, but they're not doing it alone. So my role shifts from execution to direction. This isn't done for you, and it's not a course or a group program. This is private one-on-one consulting relationship where the work is about fixing the business structure, the systems, acquisition, sales, delivery, and also the mindset that are holding the business back. We work together over 6 months, and we have regular calls 3 times per month. And between those calls, they have access to me over WhatsApp and Slack to pressure test each decision, get feedback, and also just course correct before a small issue turns into a big one. And the total investment for the consulting offer is 6.5K. So like the clients I work with, Hisham and Natalie, they're both in completely different niche. Hisham runs a education marketing agency and Natalie runs a finance coaching business. Their business looks nothing alike, but they were dealing with similar issues underneath. Both of them are very experienced. Hisham been running his marketing agency for past 5 years, and Natalie been working in the finance industry for over half a decade. They know what they're doing, and they're already working with some clients. But the problem was there was just too much decisions and too much mental load. And the setup in the business just made growing their business feels harder. And Natalie wanted reliability and stability. So she chose the Deng For route, where we designed the system and installed the system together. So she could stay focused on delivery, on her clients. And then that's how she closed 12K in 1 month with 6 new clients. And Hisham, on the other side, he wanted to build the system himself and understand it himself. So he chose the consulting path. And as his results turned $1 into 38 on ads 2 weeks after starting his account on Instagram, and also a record for his own agency. As you can see, this is different path, but same outcome. They were placed on the right delivery model to simplify decisions and execution. Then the system started compounding with them in the business. So the core offer defines what the studio is built around, but delivery defines how that work actually performs in the real world. When the delivery is designed intentionally, our content, sales, and the entire ecosystem starts to work with each other and compound with each other. And that's what allows my lifestyle studio to grow without turning into a factory-style business. At this point, for you to start building your own methodology and build your own lifestyle studio based on your own experience and how you actually think, this is the process I would follow if I was starting from scratch. The first thing I would do is to get clear on my core insight, the way I see my industry that most people don't. I would ask myself a few simple questions. What perspective do I have that only came from being in the industry for a while? What approach do I use that feels natural to me but seems to challenge the usual advice? And if I had to explain how I work to someone casually, what analogy would I naturally use? I'd also look at my own transformation, especially the small shift in mindset that changed how I operate. So once the insight is clear, I would break it down into simple phases. I would start by identifying the foundation, the first thing someone has to understand or define before anything else works. And then I would look at how the system actually connects with each other in different phases. And what bridge that foundation to real results, that's usually where structure, systems, and decision-making patterns show up. And finally, I would ask myself, what complete the system? What makes it compound over time instead of resetting back to zero every month? I always have this one rule for myself and people I work with. If I can't explain how these pieces work together in plain language, that's a signal I need to simplify. A real methodology should feel obvious once it's understood. And then this is where I apply Kaizen, small continuous improvement over time. I never try to perfect anything in theory. The first place I test a new idea is always my own business. Watch how it performs in the real world and see whether it actually creates more leverage for me. And only once I start seeing consistent, positive signals, then I start introducing it to clients. I pay close attention to what works quickly, where people get stuck, and what creates unnecessary complexity. Once I see the feedback, the data, I document what works, my decision, the order, the mistakes I help people to avoid, and that process turns into experience in a clear business structure. And that's how I build real methodology through Kaizen, continuous improvements. So this is why I call the Lifestyle Studio, and it's built on one simple idea. Your business should support your life, not consume it. I'm actively using this methodology in my own business and refining it through Kaizen. Some parts are working extremely well, others are still evolving. Because I'd rather build something durable and honest than something that's polished but unstable. It's finding your own unique insight, testing it in your own business first, and building a structure around what actually works for you. And if you want to build your own lifestyle studio to give you more freedom, enjoyment in your business, just send me a DM on Instagram and I'll get back to you. We can take it from there. Speak to you soon.